Hello, everyone. My name is Gitika Gorthy, and today I'm very excited and honored to be interviewing a very special space champion, Miss Erika Armstrong. With over 450K aviation enthusiast followers, Miss Armstrong is a pilot, accountant director for AvBuye, professor at the Metropolitan State University of Denver, author, and international keynote speaker. She has a bachelor's in international business, economics, and culture from the University of Denver and did her undergrad at the University of Minnesota in their journalism program and is finishing her master's in aeronautics at Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University. Furthermore, Miss Armstrong wrote her first book, A Chick in a Cockpit, because she realized there were so few women pilots written by women pilots, and now she is working on her second book. Absolutely incredible. She is the winner of the 2020 NBAA Professionalism in Aviation Award, and she received the Airtime Achievement in Aviation Award. And in addition to her incredible career, Miss Armstrong is a mother of two and an advocate for women in aviation. At her core, she loves aviation and is an inspiration to all women, including myself. I remember looking through her LinkedIn profile and seeing all that she was doing to advocate and inspire young women in the aviation industry. I was incredibly inspired by all that she said and is doing. I'm incredibly honored and excited to hear about Miss Armstrong's journey of what led her to do what she is doing today. So, welcome. Thank you so much for taking your time to inspire the next generation, Miss Armstrong.
Oh, thank you so much. It's lovely to be here. And after hearing your background, I really would rather be interviewing you. But thank you for having me, and I'm looking forward to having some fun here today.
Yeah, to kick off our conversation before we kind of dive into some of the work you've been doing in your journey, could you start off by sharing your typical day? I know usually there isn't a typical day, but how does your day generally run?
Yep, you nailed it. And that's the good and bad part of aviation, is that there really is no such thing as a typical schedule. And throughout your whole entire career, it's going to change so much. So that's one of those things you just kind of have to ride it out. I mean, I started off flying, air ambulance and night cargo. So on call all the time, never knowing. And throughout my career, the demands of being a human change, and your roles as a pilot will change. So that's the good thing about aviation. So right now, I'm kind of reaching back into the community, and I've been doing teaching. I do now get to spend a lot of time sitting in front of a computer, but reaching out to the rest of the world and doing what we're doing right now and advocating for the next generation.
Wow, that's incredible. I'm so glad that you're able to, in your busy schedule, make time to be able to always give back and outreach and share your journey. And as part of that, one of your initiatives, you wrote your own book. And I was reading a little bit about it. I can't believe I haven't had my book on in my hands on this book yet, but I was reading about it and I was really inspired by the purpose behind the book. So I have to ask you directly from you, what inspired you to write A Chick in a Cockpit? And what was the response to the novel that kind of inspired you and motivated you to write your second book?
Yeah, there's so many things. We could spend a whole day just talking about that, but truly you kind of touched on the idea of it, that really there are a few books out there about women pilots written by somebody else, but not a lot of pilots writing about their story and the challenges, and being honest and having a good honest conversation about those things that are in front of us. And we're all going to have our unique challenges. Some are going to be larger and smaller than others, but being able to talk about it and having platforms to communicate, like exactly what you're doing today. So bringing the women into the cockpit with me, showing you a couple examples of some challenges and some options about how to get over and around those things. Is just to help have that shared experience. Having the connection in this industry is really important. So, and then the other weird thing is that I really was in a book club, and they knew part of my story, but they were my motivating factor to actually write the words down. Um, Especially early in my career, I kind of lost all my female friends because they would invite me and I would never show up, or I'd have to leave. And over time, I've noticed that I just was surrounded by male coworkers. So reaching back into a book club and sharing that experience with other women was kind of the motivating factor behind it.
And what was the response to the book? Did you hear any, I guess, like stories of women who resonated with you, or just that positive feedback on social media? And kind of what was that driving factor to start your second book?
So this book it's beyond just flying. So there's a few tough topics in there, and those are the responses I actually get. So about 2 or 3 days a week, I still get an email in my inbox saying, "Thank you so much for writing this book and being honest about some of the challenges that women are dealing with." So for me, that was the definite driver to continue on. The second project has been so long in coming because I've been so busy, but it's there, it's in my head. I've got most of it written down and outlined, so just need to really buckle down and focus on that. But it's coming.
I am so excited. I'm so excited. And you mentioned some of the difficulties that women have in aviation and aerospace. And through some of the past interviews I've done, I've heard a lot of, you know, really crazy stories that I would have never imagined still occur in this day and age in the aerospace and aviation field. And I'm curious from your perspective, from your own journey, what were some of those most difficult challenges that you did face navigating this career path? And what advice would you give to other women or other gender minorities who might be facing kind of a similar obstacle as you to kind of overcome that difficulty? Because a lot of times we see the successful story, we see the outcome, we see that if you persist, you'll get through it. But when you're in the heat of the moment, it's really hard to kind of get the motivation to keep going. So, what advice would you give for others who may be in a similar position to what you once were in to overcome any difficulties they might be having in the workplace?
Yeah, and I'll work the problem backwards. I'm going to start by saying aviation is a messy career. So, and then I want you to start by all understanding that if you are a woman and you want to be a pilot, you can do this. I'm sorry, you can give me a list of excuses. I will not take them. There is no reason because we will help you get over those barriers. So, the playing field is leveled for both men and women when it comes to our first barrier, and that's financially trying to get your pilot license and the money and cost of getting that on top of a 4-year degree and all of those little peripheral things that you're working on. Most people don't realize the amount of time and money that takes just to get, in reality, you get a commercial license at 250 hours, you don't get hired with that. You're looking at 1,500 hours. So just think about how long that is in the air just to get a paying job like at the regional carrier. So, but because of the declining pipeline of pilots out there, we've created this dynamic, which is wonderful for the next generation. We are experiencing this extreme pilot shortage, and it's not a matter of having enough people wanting to be pilots, but qualified pilots. So what's happened in the peripheral is that the schedules are better, the pay is significantly better. When I was flying in the early 90s, learning how to fly in 1989, I started flying. People were paying to sit in the right seat of an airplane, like a King Air or something. It was just such a different dynamic than there is now. So for women coming in, the primary obstacles I see, especially for the younger generation, is just that not having the opportunity or being introduced to aviation earlier. So when I was talking to you before the interview, you were talking about a tipping point in your early education that drove you there. My early education, I remember career day in elementary school, and the girls and boys were put in different rooms for career day. So I was always upset that because I wanted to hear what the boys were being offered for their career choices, right? I was being offered, oh, you could be a librarian or a secretary. And, so I grew up with this very small, boundaries of what I could be. So right now, I think that the industry over the last 5-10 years has done a much better job of having podcasts like this and social media and reaching out and seeing women in uniform out there doing it. Because I can sit and talk about it, but if you don't see that in your life story, it's not in the back of your brain. So I think you pointed out the most important thing is introducing this idea early on so that that idea is in there as you move through your education.
Definitely. I always hear that you can't, be what you don't see, or you can't, be what you don't imagine or dream to be. And it's hard to dream or imagine that you could be someone or something if you don't ever get exposed to it or, see that it's a realistic dream to achieve. I think that's similar with even becoming an astronaut. I see that all the time where people are like, oh, being an astronaut is more of like a child's dream. It's for people who are insanely smart. And yes, astronauts are insanely smart, but also there's a lot of other things and a lot of other factors that go in that we just don't see. And we make a lot of assumptions, and we saying that I want to become an astronaut seems very like a childhood dream, right? It doesn't seem something that you could do as an adult. And so kind of taking those ideas and showing that these are realistic career choices for anyone is very critical. So yeah, that's a great point. And in your journey, you were mentioning how growing up, you were always put in these little boxes, or that's just how society kind of put different genders in their little, you have to be this, these are your options that you have. How did you kind of come out of that and navigate and find your passion in aviation? Kind of what was that aha moment that inspired you to get into aviation?
Yes, I definitely had that aha moment, and you'll laugh because I was already working two jobs going to the University of Minnesota, and I didn't have enough money to pay my tuition and rent and everything coming up. So I was looking for another job that had really weird hours. And of course, aviation is 24/7, 365. So there was a opening at the front desk of a little FBO at the Flying Cloud Airport. And I took it just because it had weird hours. That's the only reason, right? So I started working at this fixed base operator at a little airport, and I started getting exposed to business aviation and this whole world I never knew about. And we would be doing our paperwork in the evenings, but the line guys were all learning how to fly. So I was constantly listening to their stories. And just like you were saying, you always have this mindset that, oh, it's for someone else, right? So after hours, we'd be doing paperwork and I'd be helping the line guys study for the written exams. And I'm reading these, and then all of a sudden I find that I'm explaining it to these guys. Okay. So there was that one moment that tipped my own perception of myself. And I thought, okay, these guys are not rocket science. I mean, the elements that we're studying here are common sense. So just a change of perspective, I went over and took my first flying lesson, and I was hooked. That's all it took, was that one day where the instructor said, okay, it's your airplane, and I got to fly it. And I'm like, okay, I can do this. One step at a time. That's all you need to do. And absolutely, you can do this.
Wow. Yeah, I think there are certain moments that just kind of are the tipping point, like you were mentioning, that just are like, I'm gonna do this. Wow, that is incredible. And in your experience, kind of getting your foot in the door of the aviation field, did you have any obstacles as a woman, kind of saying, "Hey, I want to be a pilot. Now, how do I get there?" Like, with your educational background, how did you just how you thought of it? How did you make it happen? Like, what were those initial steps looking like?
One word: persistence. Truly, I was amazed at, actually, because I had a woman boss who actually told me that she did not think that her clients would feel comfortable with a woman in the cockpit. So it truly took a flu epidemic in our flight department, where I actually got to fly some of their high profile clients. And that high profile client called her back and said that they requested me. So I had to change her perception as well as everybody around me. So even in this day and age, it still takes that little moment, and you're gonna find it. It's gonna be there. And don't forget that whatever industry you're in, you're always going to have that percentage of jerks, right? It doesn't even necessarily mean that they're doing it to women, but they are just going to be like that in general. So please, if you come across those people, especially when they're in a leadership role, reach out to the rest of us. We will help you find a way to get through this. So don't take it quietly. I want you to, reach out and let's solve the problem instead of just hiding it and then backing off. So definitely it's that persistence throughout your whole career. You're going to have. Aviation, as you know, is literally ups and downs. And I've been furloughed, laid off. I had airplanes sold as soon as I got a job. You will experience this. So it's you have to have that mindset right from the beginning that, hey, I'm going to roll with these changes. I'm going to find a way. You don't know what it's going to be. You're not supposed to know, but it'll come to you.
Yeah, and I think that can apply to really just any industry, any field. If you're a student or a working professional, I think just having that mindset of there are going to be difficulties, there are going to be rough days, there are going to be days that are low, but I'm just going to get back up and I'm going to keep doing it because it's my dream. So I think that's such a powerful statement, because even as a student myself, sometimes it's really difficult to, every day is not going to be a high day. You are going to have lows. and you're like, oh, maybe this subject is not for me, or maybe this is not for me. But realizing that you just need to persist through and you're gonna get it is so critical. There was another lady very similar I was interviewing. She's a college student, and she had a really tough time in her physics class because she was one of the only girls, and she was struggling academically as well in that class. And she persisted. She didn't give up that, this physics isn't for me. I'm the only girl. This is too difficult. I can't do it. But instead, her mindset was, I can do it. And she persisted through it. And now she is like a flight, she's one of the lead flight controllers at NASA. It's crazy what can be done if you're just persistent and you believe in yourself.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm more into like the aerospace medicine field. I was talking to you earlier, very excited about more medical research in space, and aviation is very new to me. So I was, from wondering from your experience and your expertise, what excites you and what makes you nervous for the future of aviation?
Yeah, so let me just quick go back to what you were saying about what you want to do. And just a really quick thing that I've been kind of just on the peripheral kind of looking at is looking at the medical ailments of older pilots and what is specific to the industry itself. So I'll just put that in the back of your mind. I would love for someone to spend a little bit more time on those specific things. The anomalies I've found now in pilots that are retiring is that they have a higher risk of throat cancer, but they're non-smokers. So the environment itself may contribute to that. Macular degeneration, which possibly because you're up at high altitudes in the UV lights, and then bladder cancer. And it could be just from sitting long hours. So I'll just put that in the back of your head as you move through your education. It would be really interesting to have a spotlight on that. And then now I've forgotten the rest of the question. So,
No.
the future. Yeah, the future and what I'm looking forward to. So I'll start, first of all, with the opportunities that are coming up for pilots. I'm so excited. I've been teaching over at Metro State over here in Denver in their aviation department, and the pilots coming into this pipeline are going to experience the coolest airplanes, much more efficient and environmentally friendly. All of this technology that's coming out and that's been going on and being tested behind the scenes is about to emerge in the next 5 years. So I'm so excited that we can reduce our carbon footprint. We can still create these awesome, cool airplanes and still move the world. But along with that are also my concerns. Every day I see movement towards the single pilot cockpit or no pilot cockpit. And, the reality is what it means to be a pilot is going to change. We're just not there yet. If anybody has been in the multi-crew environment, having 2 or 3 pilots in the cockpit, you will understand even after a week how important it is to have that second pilot there. When we line up our accident reports, and if you look at the safety of the industry, the number of hours in aircraft flown and passengers flown compared to the accident rate is just astronomical. The safety rating is so amazing. By the end of today, we'll have 3,000 people perish in car accidents. So, we have to keep it all in perspective, but definitely automation is simultaneously helping the industry become much more safer, but we have to balance that also with having that pilot be the person in ultimate control during that moment of an anomaly that the computer just can't understand. It only knows so much. It only knows the information we feed it. So, we still need that pilot to have that ultimate command and that single button push to say, okay, I have final control.
I think that was really great insight. Honestly, I think a lot of times people are very fearful of, oh, aircrafts are in the air, they're going to crash, it's going to cause a lot of deaths. And the point that you were mentioning is statistically, if you look at the larger picture, the bigger picture, we're actually working towards safer transportation through the aviation field. And I think that's such an incredible point that not a lot of individuals take the time to reflect on that. I think it's such a great perspective. And you were also mentioning about the medical aspect of aviation as well. I actually didn't know that. I'm surprised that I haven't read an article or read a paper about that yet. And now I'm like very fascinated with, wow, like what are those conditions that pilots undergo and what, medical conditions do they exude and what can we do to solve that and combat that? I think that's absolutely incredible. I will definitely be reading on that afterwards. And do you, similar to that medical aviation field, How interdisciplinary is the aviation industry? Could someone who's not necessarily interested in flying still be a part of aviation? And if so, how do they navigate that in their education?
Yes, and I'm so glad you brought that up because the people that come through my classes, everyone kind of has the idea, okay, maybe I want to be a pilot, but there are so many jobs in this industry. But still it'd be lovely to have them to have a basis for piloting. And also I have all the engineers that come through my class and they have no interest in becoming a pilot. And I keep thinking, how can you understand and build an airplane that's going to be flown by a pilot if you don't have at least a general overview of what that is? So I see aircraft that are coming off the assembly line right now, built strictly by P&L statements and engineers who really do not understand the pilot mindset. So it'd be lovely if there was that little bit of balance, just a little bit of background education, even if you just have 5 or 10 hours in the airplane, just to have that cursory overview. But throughout my career and even like right now, so I'll share with you that March of 2019, I got hit by a drunk driver. So I lost the hearing in my left ear, but more importantly, I damaged the inner ear, which you'll know it's part of being a pilot is having that inner ear. We actually use it to walk and have balance. And so especially when you're in the environment where you're in the clouds and relying on your instruments, when your ear is fighting you, it's a whole other layer of issues than just being a normal human. So thankfully, because I know so much about aviation, I can go off into 20 different pathways with my knowledge that the industry needs. So even if you don't want to be a pilot, but you have an interest in aviation or space, there are so many important key roles that would love to have you there. So my main goal is to draw you into this industry and let you take a look around because I promise you'll never leave.
Definitely, and I think that's the same with aerospace as well. I love to think, I think it's the same with aviation, that it's like its own little world. You know, you're going to need the people who are interested in policy, economics, the science, the engineering, the art, the design. I think there are so many different aspects. The technicians, you're going to need every single person that you're going to need in the real just in aviation and just in aerospace. So I love to think of it as like a small little world. I think it's a really cool way to look at it. And it's great to hear from an expert as well, like that there are opportunities other than flying in aviation, though of course a background would be great. I'm really sorry to hear about the accident as well. I noticed that you also have an economics background and a policy background as well. Do you happen to use those degrees and use that knowledge that you've gained from your previous education in your career today?
Absolutely. So now that I've kind of on the business side of the industry, and that I've experienced all those years on the other side of the cockpit door, I can walk into any flight department now and find ways to make their flight department safer, more efficient. I can find pilots for them. I can find flight attendants for them. I can help them with their safety management system. So it's such a joy to be able to have that security, knowing that I can help now in so many different pathways. And it's also part of the reason why I've been able to gain followers on social media. So, I mean, how does a nerd get 500,000 followers? It's because I can, and it was scary at first, but I actually would put out the information, but I also include my opinion in there. So you're laying your neck out there for social media, take a few hacks at it. But I've learned that, hey, I've earned that knowledge. I'm going to share it. I'm going to show you the joys and the ups, but I'll also talk about the challenges and the things that I think that need to be fixed. So there's no such thing as a perfect flight. So how do we strive for that every single time? So there's always something to do.
Definitely. I think that perspective of being able to use your platform to not only just inform and say factual information, but also kind of put in your perspective as well and to share your real experiences, your authentic experiences that you've had. I think it brings so much power to your story, but also inspires so many young girls like myself in aviation. I remember when I saw that you were the first, like the number one woman to follow or professional to follow in aviation and aerospace, the list that Matt Higa put together. I was looking at the work that you were doing, the posts you made, and I was inspired by every single one of them. And I think your passion really just comes comes through the screen as well. I can really feel the energy, and I think that's exactly what inspires so many others to be like, "Hey, I should look at aviation and I should look into what they have to offer." I think it's absolutely an incredible industry. And through your journey so far, you still have such incredible ways and things to do and accomplish. But from your experience, my last and final question for you is what final piece of advice would you give to young professionals, young students who are interested in pursuing a career in aviation, STEM, really just any career, a piece of advice you wish you knew when you were a younger student?
Yeah, my advice is don't take my advice. So honestly, if you enter into this career, you are going to be told what to do and given advice in every angle. And one of the things that us as women don't acknowledge quite often is we have that little inner voice that knows better. And you're going to find yourself overriding that thing all the time. So I wish I paid more attention to myself going through my career and not listening to my external forces that were asking me to bend and shape to them. But that's a hard thing to do, and that comes with time. And I just want to say one more thing. I love STEM programs. But the irony of the feedback I've been getting from students is that there are a lot of students that haven't entered into this industry because they weren't in STEM. So I want all of you out there right now who think that math is too hard, that all of this is too hard, I want you to rethink it, because when you come into an industry, you actually get to apply common sense to all those rote things that you were learning in school, and you're sitting in class going, why do I need to know this? The reality is you don't. But what we're training you to do is to use your brain in a certain way. But when you come into this industry, even like if you want to be a pilot, the math involved, you will find, is much more common sense. When you're doing the weight and balance on an aircraft, all of a sudden you're going to look at those concepts you thought about and you're going to say, oh, I understand why we're doing this. So please don't let those programs scare you into coming in, because I promise we've got great teachers out there that are going to show you how to do this logically. So being a pilot, like you mentioned before, it's not just about understanding physics. You have got to have a fluid, confident personality. You need to be enjoyable to be around, because you're going to be locked in a box with people for the rest of your life. So if you don't know how to have like a general interaction and an appreciation for being and working in a crew environment, then it's not for you. So you can be the smartest person in the world, but if you don't get along with people, you're not going to thrive in this industry. So there are tons of other human factor things that go into this concept. So just keep that in the back of your mind if you think this is too hard.
That's such a great piece of advice to get for every young professional who is even slightly interested in aviation, just to know that this is an industry that's so interdisciplinary. They can use all these skills. You don't have to be Albert Einstein or, a physicist to be a part of this industry. There are so many different factors. Of course, we do need the insanely genius engineers and physicists, but there's a lot more to this industry. And I think we're just scratching the surface in this interview, and there's just so much more to look into. So thank you so much, Ms. Armstrong, for taking your time to provide some insight into aviation as well as sharing your inspiring journey. I'm really excited to get my hands on your first book and to be able to read and dive into it. And I will definitely be exploring aviation and medicine and aviation. So thank you so much for your time.
Well, thank you so much for doing this. I am just amazed that there are women out there like you at this age doing so much to reach out. I'm so happy to be here and to help you do this and get the word out.
Thank you so much.